a wonderful statement that I try to keep in mind about how museums function and what they do, and it was that they are a safe place to discuss dangerous issues. I think that trying to make sure that you represent different kinds of voices and opinions through having different kinds of artists represented is one of the important things that museums can do to encourage that dialogue to spread to society.
We can't really talk about women and we can't really talk about feminism without being intersectional. It's important to address really the lack of representation of these image makers.
One of the collections that we've acquired in recent years that I am particularly excited about is a collection related to its snapshots, so really very simple, almost just pictures of friends together, but from a resort that was in upstate New York called Casa Susanna. And Susanna was a cross-dresser, and she eventually lived full-time as a woman, but the resort which operated in the 1950s and 60s was a place where individuals who wanted to dress en femme, who weren't born as women, could go and live as women for the weekend. Sometimes looking back through what's available, historically speaking, gives us new photographs to look at that are important now that might not have been important then.
There still needs to be a lot of resuscitation of artists who made wonderful works before our time, who got lost from the canon of history because they were female. In a lot of cases, unfortunately, not as many works survived, which is really sad. In the early 2000s, Naomi Rosenblum and I did a show called The History of Women Photographers that opened at the New York Public Library and traveled around the United States. And it was the first in-depth historical survey of women photographers. When we applied for grants to support the show, a lot of people, women included, critics, curators, funders, potential funders said, well, we already know all the good women artists. Well, in fact, when the show happened, a lot of those people came to us and said, how come I never knew this was this artist? Or how come I didn't know this was a good artist? I'd seen work by this person, but I always thought, she's not a good artist. Well, because people just hadn't really gone to the effort to find really good works.
Or someone might say, oh, well, you can't do it by quota, it has to be by excellence. But I think there are so many excellent artists working. I think it's everyone's responsibility now to really think about making sure there's a balance. So you can't just say, oh, I'm collecting these artists and never show them. You can't say, I'm just showing these artists but not collecting them. Or you can't say, I'm showing, women or artists of color in some way without actually making sure that you're hiring or engaging patrons from a range of different communities. If your board of directors at an institution is entirely white or entirely men, if you're not addressing at the top level, then it'll be very hard for any real long-standing substantive change to happen.
Very often, people ask me, oh, you curate many exhibitions with women artists. Is this a particular area of focus for you? I remember the first time I was asked that question, I had to think for a second, oh, I do? And the reason is because there's so many amazing women artists that, I want to show in a museum, but it's not, of course, because they're women artists, it's because they're great artists. No one would ask me if I was focused on curating shows of white men.